Layer styles are effects that you can apply to your layers. You can access them by double-clicking on a layer or going down to the bottom of the Layers panel and clicking on the FX icon, from which you get a list, and you can choose whichever effect you would like to apply. So let's say we would like to apply a drop shadow for one of these images. So once I click on that, that will bring us to the Layer Style dialog box, which is really big. So I always prefer to move this to the side so I can see what's happening in the background. When you select the drop shadow option, you will get all the attributes and properties of this effect. But instead of changing the values here, you can also just click and drag the shadow around in the actual document window. So you can adjust the angle and the distance by doing that. And then you can increase, decrease the opacity to make it more intense or make it less strong on the image. And then you can also use the size. If you reduce the size, then you get a very sharp edge for the shadow. If you increase it, you can blur the shadow out. So that's how you use the drop shadow in a nutshell. But then you can also add other effects. Let's say stroke. Now, whenever you add multiple effects, make sure you don't just simply tick that box there, but also click on the word, because that way you get the options as well. So here, for example, with stroke, we can change the color of the stroke. I'm going to use white, and let's change the position to inside. And then we can also change the size so it's not so thick, something like that. Once you are ready with setting up your effects, you can click OK. And you will notice the effects will be there in the Layers panel, and you can turn them off or back on, or you can also turn them off individually, and you can double click on any of these effects to go back and make changes to them. So they are completely editable at any time. An interesting feature which was introduced in Photoshop CC is that some of the effects can actually be duplicated. So for example, we can have multiple strokes on the same image. If I change the color to something else, let's say we pick a color from this image here, and I'm going to increase the size of that, then you might notice that we only see one of these effects, but because the thicker one is on top, that's why we don't see the other one. You just have to click on this arrow here to move an effect down, and you can see now we have two strokes. We have the white one, and we have this magenta color that I just picked from the other image. Wherever you see a plus sign, that means those effects can be duplicated, so you can use multiple versions of them on the same layer. Don't look for this in previous versions. This is again only available in Photoshop CC. Now, if I go back to my layers, I just click OK, then I can copy this effect from one layer to another by Alt click and dragging the FX icon. If I do that, all the effects will be copied. If I don't hold down the Alt, just simply drag the effects icon from one layer to another, then I just move the effects. So remove it from the previous layer and move it onto this one. And you can also separately move effects between layers. Like this drop shadow, I can just drag and put it onto the other layer there. If you go to the window menu and open styles, that is the panel where you can save your settings. So I have this image selected and I click on new style. I can call this whatever I want, double stroke and shadow, for example. And you see we have an option here, add to my current library as well, which is only in Creative Cloud version of Photoshop. But if I click OK, it's not only saved in the Layer Styles panel, but also in the Libraries panel. So if I go to Window, Libraries, it will also be there. So you can see there's the double stroke style saved. Why is that useful? Well, this styles option might not be always available in other documents, but as long as it's saved into your libraries, you will always be able to find it from this panel in any of the document, and even other computers. As long as you log into your Creative Cloud account, you will be able to find all your saved layer styles. Let me also show you another interesting feature. If I go into the drop shadow option, you can see that we have a feature here called use global light. Now, when I start changing the angle of my shadows, it not only changes on the currently selected layer, but it changes on all the layers that uses drop shadow or any effects that would have an angle feature. So as long as the use global light is selected, the angle and the distance of shadows and all these light effects will be all linked and connected, which makes everything look more realistic. So imagine the shadows going all kinds of different ways and different length, then it won't look natural. It won't feel like there is a light source that casts these shadows from the objects. So use global light is definitely a useful feature. And I would like to also make sure you know that you can use layer styles on groups. So if I select these 3 layers and go to layer group layers or Command G, which puts them all into a group, then instead of having the effects on the individual layers, we can drag the effects onto the group itself, and then I can right click on these other layers within the layer group and clear the layer styles, because we don't need to have them twice. Now we have all the effects here on the group, so I can turn it on and off, and you see all 3 layers are affected by these layer styles. So if you want to use the same style, instead of duplicating it, just put everything in a group and apply the effects on the group itself. And as long as the images are within that group, they will be affected. As soon as I move it outside of the group, you see now it doesn't have those effects. But once I put it back, again, it will receive the layer style from the layer group. And that's all you really need to know about layer styles in Photoshop. So in the next video, I'm still talking about layers, but we will cover another very interesting feature called blend modes.